All right, welcome back to Panthers Tracks. I'm Jonathan Alexander here with none other than Ellis Williams, my guy. We are in some new digs, and we moved up to the Hampton Hills, didn't we?
Look at all this, man. We're in a studio now. I'm out of my apartment. We don't got each other on the small Zoom boxes or the StreamYard, man. I'm across the table from you. It feels good to be in here, man.
I feel so motivated now, just looking at all this. We feel professional now.
Right. We don't want to set the bar too high, but I think we got some potential in here, man. And I'm excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, we Panthers fans, we heard your comments. You love the content, but you just wish that our audio was a little bit better. So we went out there and said, you know what, you want better audio? We're gonna give you better audio, and we
And
here.
we have delivered, man. We got these mics in front of us. No longer the choppy or the echoes, man. We got the headphones on. You sound great. I hope I sound all right, man. Let's get after it,
You sound amazing,
my man.
amazing. So let's get straight into it. We just finished up. As we're recording this, this is a Friday. You all will hear this on Tuesday morning. But we just wrapped up minicamp. Saw a lot, not too much competition, but we got a good peek at Sam Darnold, Matt Corral, the quarterback battle, some other players. Let me ask you, Alice, you chronicle this every 3 days. What stood out to you in particular? It could be anything. What stood out to you from Panthers minicamp?
Well, I think first the obvious thing is the veteran presence was lacking. Matt Rule allowed a lot of his veterans, up to like 12 guys, a lot of offensive guys, just take time off. No DJ Moore. We'll probably get into Robbie Anderson. He wasn't there, but then what kind of was at the end. No Christian McCaffrey, Ian Thomas, 2 or 3 linemen out, which then put a lot of emphasis on not only the younger guys have an opportunity to show what they can do, but on Sam Darnold to lead a group of young playmakers through a new offense, which he is learning himself. I thought one of his sharper quotes from the week was that it's my obligation as a quarterback to know what everyone else is doing, which is surface level and obvious. But when you see it actually happen on the field, when undrafted free agents are running the wrong routes and Sam has to make sure they're lined up correctly and in the right spots, that's a lot to put on a veteran quarterback who doesn't have his assortment of usual suspects out there, right? And after you get past because that was kind of a little bit of a shock to us, like, oh, there's just, all the first team, all the first deep guys from the skill position essentially are sitting out. But once you got past that and you just watched Sam navigate this offense, I thought he put together a pretty sharp three days. Highlighted and climaxing on that final day at Bank of America Stadium, which I was kind of up in the concourse hiding in the sun there from the sun there, and y'all were front and center on the in the bleacher sidelines there on the 50. But we got a really good view of what this offense looks like, both in the red zone, situationally, 2-minute drill stuff, and what Ben McAdoo's trying to accomplish. And I think that Panther fans, as you have really made clear on Twitter, that, hey, this is just mini camp,
Yeah.
right? Like, everybody chill out. But we are starting to see the bits and pieces of what a Ben McAdoo offense is supposed to look like. And we're talking quick throws, we're talking timing, we're talking matchups. You tweeted about it, the one touchdown. I think Brandon Zelstra caught it, just a fade route, and isolated on the left side, and he allowed Ben McAdoo, giving Sam Darnold the freedom to pick his matchup and go make a throw. Imagine if that's DJ Moore, right? Those are the type of throws that I think when Sam fully masters this offense, or whoever the quarterback is going to end up being, because we'll get into Matt Corral and the type of week he had, you have a quick throw offense that is predicated in getting the ball to its playmakers. And I thought each day we saw that grow more. The first day being a little more rusty, and then culminating that third day, seeing the offense really go blow for blow to the defense and just scoring and having fun with it. Rashard Higgins scores a touchdown. Ike Ekwonu gets in the end zone. Like, it was a fun third day. So
Yeah.
I think from the veterans resting to Sam Darnold, we watched him grow before our very eyes within this offense. The younger playmakers, and then really just the atmosphere and the energy around this team. Matt Rule seems to be coming from a more calm place. And you could speak to that better than I, as you were here last year for minicamp, you saw training camp, but I saw a team that was in a way comfortable at where it was at.
Yeah.
And growing into its own. And again, over that 3-day process, I thought we saw progress each day, and that was one of the bigger takeaways for me.
Yeah, they look a lot more comfortable. Matt Rule in particular, and he mentioned it. He mentioned Bruce Spate, head of their PR department. Said he looked like he was having a little more fun. Yeah, I agree. I think when I look back on last year, Matt Rule seemed to be very. I don't know the right way to say it, but he was very serious and and very in control, or really, delegating everything. Not really delegating everything, but really, calling everything. And now you see him delegate it more to other people. And he had his like you mentioned, he had his veterans out there, kind of coaching the younger players. So perhaps that's a good sign that he's feeling like he doesn't have to do everything like he did last year, and it's probably part of the reason why they struggled in some aspects. I agree. I think Sam Darnold, while it's only OTAs, and I'll reiterate that again, guys, because you all slammed me on Twitter just for without reading the part where I said it's only OTAs. Sam Darnold did look good. He made some nice throws, and I think I had a few people even say, like, we told you this, you all told us this last year. No, I don't remember Sam Darnold looking good last year. But he's looked more comfortable in the offense. In this particular offense, he's looked more confident in himself. I think last year he seemed a lot unsure of himself in figuring out a new team. I think one of the more impressive things I saw from Sam Darnold was when that offensive line was called for a false start.
Yep.
And a lot of people ask me who was the offensive lineman. I can't remember who the offensive lineman was, but it was definitely the second string offensive line.
And it was a couple guys.
Yeah, and there was a couple guys called for a false start. Sam Darnold got mad and slammed the ball down. Was like, "Come on!" or he yelled out something. I think, he didn't, yell at anybody in particular, but it just showed a little bit of leadership and a want to be perfect, because that offensive line was terrible last year.
I completely agree in that moment. I thought it was something from Sam I had never seen before.
Never.
Right? And for this California cool kid to take ownership of the offense in that way and show his frustration after really dominating the whole first half of practice, right? Like, I opened this podcast saying, like, we saw, I think, 3 touchdowns from Sam Darnold. Matt Corral came in, throws 2. Like, the offense was really having their way with the defense. And Matt Rule talked about after practice how, we in a way set it up that way. We were going for it on 4th down, being aggressive, but still the offense has to execute, right? Mm-hmm. And we saw some nice throws, both Sam making plays, but also Ben McAdoo's scheme, just having wide open targets for Sam Darnold. And for him to just, it wasn't enough. And that sounds surface level, like, oh, of course, he didn't prove anything. Like, if that's going to be the bar or the comeback for everything, then it's like, then why are they even practicing, right?
That's a really good point.
Like, they can't play a game yet. Yeah. It is not week 1 of the regular season. The Cleveland Browns are not in town. Yeah. So we have to measure this, as the coaches do as well, every day on the performance you see on tape and on the field. And right now, that the most recent being minicamp.
Yeah.
And for Sam Darnold to take ownership of that, spike the ball in frustration, not, like you said, not yelling at nobody, not talking down to anybody, just overall expecting more from himself and the unit. The ownership was the word you used, I believe, and I think that's a perfect way to encapsulate it.
Yeah. And I think, Sam Darnold, I'm not saying, you briefly touched on it, I'm not saying Sam Darnold, this means that Sam Darnold's going to be great. I'm not saying that at all. I'm still of the belief that the Panthers ought not to take a chance and ought to, try to find an upgrade at quarterback if they can. I'm still of that belief. However, I do feel a little bit more confident in Sam than I ever did last year, just because he seems to be taking the necessary steps. Now, he has to continue those steps. Training camp is where the pads come on. Training camp is where the competition really gets stiff. Yeah. His teammates, he'll be playing against first-string guys, and he'll have his first-string guys with him. So there's a lot more to be seen, but I think the key is that he's taking steps in the right direction, and that's what you need if he's going to be your quarterback, because there's a chance that Cleveland Browns say, nah, Panthers, we're not about to pay all this money for Baker Mayfield. We found somebody else, and there's a chance that the 49ers say, like no, we're gonna either go with Jimmy G or we're gonna give him to somebody else. So there's a slight chance that Sam Darnold is a quarterback. So I think it's important to realize that there are steps. It doesn't mean it's the final product, but he's taking those necessary steps, and hopefully for you Panthers fans, if he is the quarterback, hopefully he is improved, and he'll definitely have an improved offensive line, 100%.
Yeah, that's, again, I think the biggest takeaway from the offseason that the Panthers have had is just that the supporting cast is sound. You've written about it ad nauseum. There's going to be 11, 12 different starters on this team. I wrote about it in my takeaways yesterday. Guys that were counted on as starters a year ago, Cam Irvings, Dennis Daly's, they're relegated to backup roles now.
Yeah.
And that's huge.
Yeah.
I mean, because those guys aren't bad football players. They're just not the type of guys you want in there for 60, 80 snaps.
Absolutely.
Right.
And then now you got them, like, you have them just in case somebody does get hurt. Maybe you put them in briefly. I know you all don't have as much confidence in Cam Irving, but at least he has that experience now,
Yep.
right? But when you have him now as a second or a third string guy, like, you feel a little bit more comfortable. Now you have that depth.
Yep.
That you were missing last year.
Yep. I saw this play out in Cleveland. Chris Hubbard was a swing tackle for them. Came over from.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, that's the alarm I'm talking too loud. That's how Jonathon keeps me on pace, right? Like, hey, I'm just playing. No, but a swing tackle and Chris Hubbard came over, and he had to come in a couple times to close games. Someone would get hurt. He'd get maybe 4 or 5 series and look really good, right? But then when that injury lingers and you see the backup tackle having to be a full-time guy, he's just not it. Mm-hmm. And that's the situation the Panthers were in last year. And now they got a left tackle that's catching touchdowns and hitting the icky shuffle, man.
Man.
How things have changed.
Man, Kim Ekwonu, he's something, man. I like covering him so far. But, yeah, he's got his own trick play. And if I see that, man, I'm definitely going to, he was excited to get that touchdown, man.
Right. And now we know if he ever scores in a regular season NFL game, the move's ready.
Yeah.
Like that, that was the dress rehearsal. Yeah. Like he's ready to go. He's ready to go.
Yeah.
Jonathon, I want to ask you, staying on the quarterbacks here, and I touched on it a little bit. Sam Darnold's in the spot. Like, I thought it was interesting to look at, Thursday's practice as, is this the last time Sam Darnold will be QB1 for the Carolina Panthers? Because by the time they convene a training camp, like you said, maybe Baker Mayfield is here. Mm-hmm. Jimmy Garoppolo is on schedule to be thrown by then. Maybe he re-enters this equation. We've both done extensive reporting that tells us, and just in our conversations, that this Baker Mayfield deal is further apart than it probably seems. Like, they still got a ways to go, which to me is both sides still just playing chicken. Like, all right, who's going to blink first, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's probably closer than they want us to realize, but it's like, who blinks first? But with that being said, the one constant in all this, and again, you've written about it, that won't change, is Matt Corral's presence. Yeah. And I'm curious what you thought about the rookie and what you saw over those 3 days of minicamp, and where you see him picking up in training camp when we get to Spartansburg.
Yeah, I came away optimistic about Matt Corral. He seems to be confident in himself. I think there were a couple things that I've had when I've seen him throw. I think he tends to hold on to the ball a little bit too long. That's one criticism I have. He's also a smaller quarterback, so I wonder, how he'll be when he has to throw the ball over the middle. So that's one thing. Also, his durability. He's really small, and he loves to take off.
I was just gonna say, those instincts don't go away till you learn the hard way.
Right.
Like that when Jared Goff was a rookie, that hit is just stapled in my mind. He just thinks you can get to a spot you can't. I mean, Tom Brady got plastered once.
Mm-hmm.
That hit lives forever. Like, these rookies got to learn the hard way. And to your point, the way he rushed the football in college, when the play breaks down, he's just gonna take off.
Yeah, and he can't do that here. And I've seen a tendency to take off. He's gonna have to get down for sure. But the thing I was optimistic. I saw his arm, and it was one recent practice. I think it was at day 2. He was really slinging it, or maybe it was day 3. But he was really throwing. He had a really tight throw. He seems like he can hit it in small boxes. That I think that arm strength is really going to be good when he does. To me, that shows that, when he does get to where he is, where he needs to be, like he can make the throws necessary. Of course, Matt Rule mentioned it. He has to work on the pre-snap. College quarterbacks, they don't have as much responsibility as what an NFL quarterback has to do, and that's something he'll learn in due time. But I think in the right offense, and maybe this is the right offense, with the right pieces around him, if he stays smart in protecting his body, I think Matt Corral can be a solid starter. How high? I'm not really sure. But there were some good things I saw from him.
Yeah, I completely agree. What was most encouraging to me, it really didn't happen on the field. Like, I can't pick out some of his reps other than, the obvious ones, the couple red zone touchdowns, like the things you said, the quick release, that's always been there. But from a coaching standpoint, like when you try to peel back how coaches tailor rookies and take care of how they're going to be integrated into an offense, I noticed Matt's reps go up each day at minicamp. I asked Matt Rule about it, I think, the second day on Wednesday, and he was kind of short with me about it. He's like, I don't got the script in front of me. Some of the segments run longer than others, yada, yada. But, I try my best to document every passing rep at these things. And according to my notes, Matt Corral got more reps each day at minicamp, again, culminating in that last day inside Bank of America Stadium, where he out-repped P.J. Walker probably 2-1. It's important to keep in mind Sam Darnold is out-repping whoever the number 2 quarterback was 2-1 as well. Like, Sam is getting a heavy bulk of the reps.
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
Right. But just when you're talking about Matt Corral in a vacuum, the coaching staff both having the confidence in him to give him more reps and also starting the process of sink or swim. Like, you got to go out there, right? You can only protect a kid for so long. I would say that Matt answered the call professionally while still admitting, like, I thought when he came to the podium, it was pretty telling. He, physically he's ready. In his mind, he says that, physically I'm ready. There's no limit. I don't have any limitations. It's all upstairs. And he feels himself slowly getting more comfortable, saying he takes the playbook everywhere with him, right? Like, he had to travel back home. He was in the playbook deep the entire time. And then someone asked him, when will you be ready? And he said, whenever Coach McAdoo says I am.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the political answer, but both the truth too. And I find the whole Matt Corral variable one of the most interesting parts of this team right now, because things can change all around him in that quarterback room, right? We already went over it. Darnold may stay. Darnold may go. Baker may show up. Jimmy Garoppolo may be brought in. Whatever it is, Matt Corral is the constant in that room. And he's got an opportunity to just kind of cut through all the noise. And if he keeps progressing the way he did in those 3 days at minicamp, I don't want to get ahead of it, but there's going to be a point in the year where it's like, play the kid.
Yeah.
Because he's shown it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think I do believe if the Panthers don't trade for Baker Mayfield or Jimmy G for some reason, I do think Matt Corral is going to play at some point.
Right.
Absolutely. Because they ought to. They ought to figure out, if he's ready, they got to figure out, is he the guy you want leading your franchise in the future? And you only know that by getting him out there and playing. So it'll be interesting to see. I want to ask you this, though, because I've been getting this question a lot on radio interviews. Are you concerned about Robbie Anderson in his retirement tweet?
Man, Robbie Anderson. So that tweet popped up. Let me think. I was headed to a wedding. I believe it was last Saturday. And it's one of those tweets where you just know right away, like, dang, Robbie.
Yeah.
You just started a storyline and a narrative that is unnecessary, right? Because when I saw it, I looked over at my guy and I said, hey, man, I've posted an Instagram story or something about retiring too. Like, because you just kind of say stuff in the moment. And that was kind of his answer, right? So initially, I'm going to be real with you, I didn't make much of it because I think Robbie, if you've been following his behavior, has been more active on social media this offseason and really just kind of speaking his mind, letting things flow, the subconscious just go, and in a way like a musician does, right? Like we don't hold, well, unless you're Slime, we don't really hold these musicians to their every word that they put out there on social or in their music. But these athletes it's a different realm, right? It's a different playing field, no pun intended. So what I thought was, I didn't make much of the tweet, but what I did take a large notice to was how he carried himself around the team coming back to Charlotte. And I think he's a guy who, of course, needs to have a big year this year, and Matt Rule seems to have nothing but confidence in him. But football, for all the talking we do about it, and literally Robbie tweeting about it, this is a game about your body and your physical, right? And when a guy shows up and already has a hip and can't go, and then it's another nagging injury, and he can only get so many reps, this is something to watch as we get into training camp. Like, Robbie needs to practice.
Yeah.
That's what this comes down to. So I want to hear what you have to say about the tweet, and I know you wrote the story. But to me, and it perhaps it's just the football background, I always look at the physical. Like, all right, man, you can tweet what you want. You can show up when you want because this stuff is voluntary. You know, speaking of OTAs and the 9 weeks they just had. But when it's go time, is your body going to be ready? Because that's on you. And so far, Robbie is 0 for 1 with his body being ready when it's time to mandatorily practice.
Yeah, I mean, I'd definitely be concerned. I mean, he said he felt like he was going through some personal things. Robbie's definitely is an introspective person who, person who looks at life and tries to figure out his purpose. And he's talked a lot about that. Talked a lot about it last year. And the fact that he's going through personal things and that would make that thought come into his mind, and then even tweet it out, go even further, knowing the even though he deleted it, knowing the perception that it would give off, to me is very concerning, because I wonder, like, if things start to go south maybe a little bit, if he's not getting the targets that he's wanting, will he check out? I think that's the question I have. Robbie will say he's competitive and is going to keep playing to the end, and then you hope that happens, but when you start talking about retirement stuff, usually a lot of the people who've said, the people I've watched who said they retire, they said they retired because, they just didn't have the desire to work out anymore. They just didn't feel like doing it anymore. So why do it? So, like, I kind of equate that to Robbie. Like, is he feeling that way?
Right. This is really important, and I agree with all that. And to infer it, I can see where that's coming from, right? He's creeping up on 30. He's done everything an undrafted player from Temple would want to do in this league, right? But this is where, and I should have led with this, but this is where it didn't add up to me, literally because of the money and why I knew there was no way he was serious. The Panthers restructured his contract this offseason. So if Robbie Anderson were to retire, they took, I think, like $8 million bonus and gave it to him all in guaranteed money. He'd owe like 11 or 12 million back.
Yeah, I actually have that up. He owe a lot because he got that bonus money from that extension.
Yep.
19.4.
Right. So
he'd owe about 19.4 from last year's extension and this year's contract restructure. Combine those two. So
that man's playing football.
He's got to play. He's got to play. So one thing I know, he'll definitely be on the playing out there. Now, will he be checked out?
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
that's what this is about.
That's what this is about. And Sam Darnold's reaction.
I know.
To our question, he seemed concerned.
Yep.
And you could look at it multiple ways. He hadn't even had a conversation with Robbie when we talked to him about it.
Yep.
So you can, and he saw it. He mentioned he saw it. He was surprised by it.
Yep. And you know who could benefit from this the most? And we, of course, we want nothing but the best for Robbie. We cover this team impartially, but you want to see anyone succeed off the football field, right? And a lot of that success off the field comes from when they're in their best form on it. So these things are connected. We understand that. But this is also a game of opportunity.
Yeah.
And Terrence Marshall has a real chance
Yeah.
to peek his head in the door here. He was getting monster reps with DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson out. And life has a way of just checking you and putting you in the right spots at the right time if you're ready for the opportunity.
Yeah.
And I know you have been on top of this. Terrence seems like a guy who is in prime position to, if Robbie, for whatever reason, checks out one week or just isn't active or comes to training camp with his body not completely ready, this young man seems like he's ready to step in.
Yeah, I could easily see Terrence taking over that number 2 spot. I mean, Ben McAdoo talked about it a couple of weeks ago. He said, "I like to look in that young man's eye."
It's a great quote.
And I talked to Terrence for about 10 minutes, and that dude is focused. He even mentioned it in the press conference, like he's ready to show the world what he's capable of.
Damn.
One thing I felt like he didn't get many opportunities last year in that offense. I think he only had 17 catches. And, part of it was a little nagging injuries that got to him, and he felt like that wasn't so much of a big part. But, I think Ben McAdoo realizes how valuable he could be. He's a big body. He has good speed, good hands. He has so much potential. I really think he's going to emerge eventually as a number 2 receiver. I can see that. Robbie has great ability too. But I can really see Terrence Marshall emerging, and even Christian McCaffrey said, great things about him, and he's taken a huge step. So you're right. It's probably going to be an opportunity for Terrence Marshall to really shine.
Yeah, and Robbie is a guy, he's a made man. He's made a ton of money. He seems comfortable at where he's at in life, like I said, creeping up on 30, and you got someone on the complete opposite end of the spectrum in Terrence. A second-year player, felt perhaps maybe a little slighted as a rookie. Everyone comes into this league thinking they're going to compete for Rookie of the Year, right? And go on and have 17 catches. And now you come in and refocus and almost humble yourself. And it's not from an arrogant standpoint. I don't mean it that way. This league just has a way of putting people back on planet Earth. I mean, you come from LSU. You're coming from, right?
I bet the success of his boys
Exactly.
really is motivating him. He talked a little bit about them. He keeps in touch with them. They don't talk about football. But I bet, he saw that, 2 of the best wide receivers in the league, and he says, when I was on the team with them, I was getting mine too, so I want to do that too. And I bet that has something to do with his focus too.
Yeah, it has to, because when you come from those the highest of highs, I mean, what LSU was doing, and whether it's his boys and Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase, or the quarterback himself and Joe Burrow, I mean, these guys are becoming household names overnight. And he was toe for toe with them at LSU, and for him to be a second-round pick, he comes from that. He's got that level of clout. So perhaps there's a sleeping giant ready to be awoken in the wake that is the Robbie Anderson, we'll say, loose hold on the number 2 receiver spot. I will add this, since we're talking about the receivers, Rashard Higgins is a name to watch, a guy who is a consummate pro, 6-year veteran. He's not the upside long play that Terrence is, but Rashard is a guy who's going to come in, give you exactly what you need. He's huge on third downs, possession receiver. Deceivingly quick. He can get behind the secondary, whether that's just because of a lack of respect or a lack of game plan. He can win these one-on-one matchups. I saw him for 2 years in Cleveland really come in when Odell Beckham Jr. was in and out of the lineup for long stretches there, and just provide consistency.
Yeah.
And you see the fire he plays with. He scored on day 3 of minicamp, and had a nice celebration with the team and the offensive line afterwards. Those guys buying into the charismatic character that Hollywood Higgins can be. Charlotte fans, you perhaps will see a red carpet celebration from him soon when he scores. He adjusts the shoulder pads a little bit, has a teammate roll out imaginary red carpet, and he struts. He does his walk. He really became a face of the team in Cleveland. One of those guys who was never a star, but in the city was. And again, it goes back to what happens with that, because it's a trickle down effect, right? Like if the number 2 receiver spot's in question, well, that means the number 3 spot is too. Mm-hmm. So you're going to have an opportunity to kind of get in where you fit in there and prove yourself. He had back-to-back first down catches to end some of those situational sessions on the third day of minicamp. And he's a guy that is going to go out there, find a way to separate, and always catch the football. And I think the way we can wrap up this wide receiver talk is really to say the Panthers are in a really good spot with these skill position guys.
Yeah. I mean, in particular, that wide receiver who makes the team is going to be very interesting.
Because he might not even make the team.
Yeah, because he might not even make the team. I think the Panthers are going to keep 6 wide receivers because of Andre Roberts.
Yep.
He's going to be that kick return guy, and he can, catch passes. So let's say Andre Roberts is a lot. Robbie Anderson's a lot. DJ Moore is a lot. And Terrace Marshall. That's 4. So now you got Brandon Zylstra, who they love because of his versatility. He got better in the receiving game last year, but he's their special teams guy. I think Brandon Zylstra has the advantage as the 5th guy. You draft Shi Smith as well, and they have high hopes for Shi Smith, but he's kind of like on that edge.
Yep.
So you got Rashard Higgins, and then you got a couple of undrafted rookies who have had some good performances in minicamp.
And they like a couple of those guys. And,
I more see those guys, being their practice squad guys. However, somebody might take those guys up pretty quickly. So you just never know how how they'll end up viewing this. Training camp is going to decide a lot of this. So I think for Rashard Higgins, who had that great day 3, he's going to have to be a little bit more versatile, and be able to do multiple things for them to decide, like, okay, we're going to keep him. But it's going to be an interesting battle for those last 2 spots that aren't already, set in stone. So it'll be an interesting battle in camp. You can't, wait to see, how things play out.
Yeah, and that's what this is all building towards, right? Like, Matt Rule was very clear that the competition doesn't start in minicamp. Don't tell the players that, because they're going out there to compete, right? They're ready. They're at each other's necks from a teammate standpoint, but they know what's on the line. But minicamp is used from a coaching standpoint to just get a good last evaluation and clear picture of where this roster's at. Validate every room. Is this guy more of a slot? Is he a Z? Should he just stay at X? But since we're staying on the receiver room, it gives these coaches a crystal clear picture of how to then start those position battles in training camp. And that's where we're headed. And I think that's a decent transition to where this roster is at. Jonathon, do you think that this roster is set going into training camp, let's say quarterback aside, or do you suspect any more additions between now and really the 5-week break that the coaches and players are going on?
Yeah, this is that time right now that they're sitting down and evaluating it with each other. I think the fact that they brought in Carlos Dunlap for a visit means that they're interested in adding a defensive end. So if the Panthers add a position, I think defensive end in particular is where they'll look. I think they could also do themselves a service if they looked at adding a linebacker too. Mm-hmm. But I think an edge rusher is where they're going, and I could definitely see that happening.
And that doesn't really surprise me. I mean, we've talked all offseason about that Hassan Reddick-sized hole, right, opposite Brian Burns. And, they can talk all they want about Gross Matos or Marquise Haynes and Frankie Lou, guys who they believe can fill that spot in a increased role, increased snaps, but it doesn't change the body count, right? Mm-hmm. Like you need depth at that spot, especially that spot, right? Guys who can just come in fresh, ready to get after the quarterback. So if Dunlap is the guy, don't expect, him to just become Hassan Reddick or be on the field every single play, right? Like, this is still going to be a by committee solution to replace the team high sacks and to replace the team high quarterback hits of Hassan Reddick. But that extra body will really finalize that group of edge rushers.
Yeah.
And they're not going to be asked to do a whole lot in camp anyway. This is we spend so much time talking about the offense because that's the part that first of all has the most questions, and second of all, you can see that in a practice standpoint on where the ball's going and what the goal of the offense is compared to a defense that, like Matt Rule said about Sam Darnold, no one's trying to knock you down yet.
Yeah.
And once that starts, we'll have a much better idea of where this defensive line room is, and specifically the edge rushers.
Yeah, and these players, they play multiple positions. Like Frankie Louvu was talking about, he's primarily been edge rusher, but he's going to play some inside. And Yetur Gross-Matos, Matt Rule was talking about looking for a guy who can edge, run, play the edge, but kick it inside and on third downs. And Yetur has done that last year. And so, these guys aren't specifically on that edge, like Hassan was. So, adding another body is only going to be beneficial to them. So, it might not be a guy who's like the quote unquote like Brian Burns of the defense or the Hassan Reddick, but they'll do themselves a service if they add another edge rusher.
Yep, exactly.
Yep.
One thing in this new studio, we do not have a timer in front of us, right? like when we were doing this on StreamYard, we always knew how long we were running. I feel like we've hit really the main points from camp. Anything else on your mind, Jonathon?
Nothing else on my mind right now. Try to bring y'all an episode next week as well. But I'm loving these new digs, and can't wait to have you check out more of us. But thanks for listening as always. Please continue to read our work and consider subscribing. CharlotteObserver.com /sports. Thanks again.